three-stage process through this committee. We will send out all the dates. We already have them established so that our great staff can be there. And we're going to hold Mr. Gelson to an hour and a half of conversation or less, and then we can have some questions.
Hour and a half?
Hour and a half.
I won't speak. So what we have to do is when I did my presentation, we tried to make it logical in what we did first and how we did it, and I really focused on operations. And operations, in my opinion, is the heart of MDC, right? What we do and how we do it, it really starts there. So I asked Chris Levesque, the Chief Operating Officer, to present on operations for the first meeting. And he has brought a slew of people from operations to help him and just introduce them to the board. So they're petrified to speak, and so we're not going to make them speak, but we are going to introduce them, and we're going to, they can help explain some of the things that they do. But I'm going to stop short there, and Chris, go ahead.
Sure. Just probably a lot of new faces. Start covering most of the MDC. Our operational staff, typically they're out right now making a repair somewhere, extended hours, making sure our service is going. Just an example, we were out Friday night. We all wanted to get home for the weekend, but we had a sewer collapse on Vine Street. With a number of customers were backed up, making sure their basements were habitable, cleaned up as a result of that backup. So this is what these gentlemen do on a daily basis. And just to go around, just introduce Dave Ruddy, our Director of Operations. 29 years at the district, probably dozen departments, dozen positions, probably seen it all. He's my resource for a lot of things. So John Fleming, the Manager of Operations. John's the most senior guy at 35 years at the company. So he's 48 years old. So. Going through Tony Pantalino, Superintendent of Operations. He's just behind John at 34. Pete Stalinsky, Assistant Superintendent. So Pete's been with the company 14 years. He's basically responsible for our valve program as well as our repair crew. So all of our repairs department is with Tony and obviously under John, but Pete and Matt, we're going to get to. But they're the ones out there 24/7 making the water main repairs, Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, you name it, middle of the night. These are the crews that they run. Dean Gazzo, Assistant Superintendent. So Dean's close behind at 29 years at the company. He's responsible for all of our maintenance groups, so hydrants, meters, and sewers. So vast area, but basically all of our preventive maintenance and operations of those equipment associated with that, as well as Jay Tinsley. Maybe the most important job in the company is our Senior Supervisor. In the meter department, so he makes sure that, as we'll cover in the presentation, and sort of the journey we've been on under Scott's direction since 2008 and addressing our meter management program. Jay's taking this on over the last couple of years, but it's one of the most important jobs, making sure that we get our reads, we stay up to date, we address customers' issues with those reads. He's also, during the day, his staff that goes and addresses, investigates leaks, whether it be on the customer side or within our distribution system. And then Matt Scan, Matt's sort of the newcomer of the group at 10 years, but brings a lot of wealth and knowledge, great experience and great ideas to the organization. He's our Senior Supervisor. He works hand in hand with Pete in the repair department. So I'll get going. I'll stop talking. Try to keep it to a half hour. Get Scott the rest of the time.
No, I'm not speaking.
This date. Is that no? Okay. John, does that work?
You're good.
Everyone see it? Okay. So just a little background. We're organized into basically 5 divisions. Sole purpose to manage our sewer collection and water distribution system. As I said, repair department, basically all the corrective maintenance. If we have to do an excavation, that's their responsibility. We also SIPs with Tom Tyler, Director of Facilities. If Tom's staff reaches out, we'll go assist the facilities with excavations, repairs at the facilities as well. Sewer maintenance, a lot of responsibility. We're going to get into it, making sure the sewers are clean, CCTVing, flood control system, catch basin cleanings, maintaining our CSO and SSO structures, and performing investigations and basically emergency response at all times. Hydrant maintenance. We perform this service for all of the towns that we service with water. We essentially maintain 10,200 hydrants on an annual basis. We also service about 1,200 private hydrants as well. So this is at least a one-year touch, once a year touch on each hydrant. As you see, when we started getting some of the performance measures, we're out there multiple times on each hydrant. Some of them we're repairing, also draining down during the winter so they don't freeze up. So if there's a fire, those hydrants are available to our fire departments. Meter management, again, 100,000 meters and counting. And we're going to get into some of the good work Jay's doing and addressing some of the unmetered services that we've brought to the Water Bureau and the board recently, addressing those as well. And then our valve maintenance program. Really, this is the critical component to our system. In the event that a break occurs, we need to be able to shut that main down. They play a vital role to make sure we can get access to those valves. And we'll get into some of the repair work they've done and responses they've done, including the 54-inch break that we had to respond to this August on the side of I-84. So quickly keep going here. Just a little history. So my personal background, started in engineering. I got lucky enough when Scott came on board as the chief operating officer, I took a position within his group. And part of this was he wanted to get a good grasp of what we were up against. And this is when we were starting to come into our consent order and consent decree and our long-term control plan. There was a lot of work being put onto the operations department. And at the time, our engineering department wasn't as organized as it is today. So a lot of this work was being funneled down the operation. So we looked at what our requirements are to support the Clean Water Project, as well as all the CMON responsibilities, which was maintenance that technically we should have been doing. And that's how we got into the case with the consent decree and consent order. Now we're doing it, we're managing it. A lot of the operations is actually managing all of our contractors before engineering took in and took on that responsibility to support operations. So we looked at what our pool of all of our union staff supporting this, whether it be technical staff, supervision, and labor staff, ultimately, and we started seeing we're not going to be able to keep up with the backlog. So we knew we had to make a change. So we did a full evaluation, and that's when we really looked at, hey, things have to change over a period of time. Keep on moving on. As part of that, we did need to organize our staff. So we had, you can imagine, this really doesn't do it justice, but those 5 divisions, you can imagine we had a sewer maintainer 1, 2, and a crew leader. Hydrant maintainer 1, 2, and a crew leader. Valve maintainer, gate maintainer 1, 2, and a crew leader. Meter maintainer 1, 2, and a crew leader. Customer service maintainer 1, 2, and a crew leader. So we had all these job positions that were essentially one-offs. So they could do 1 or 2 things only specific to those types of asset classes. So under Scott's direction, we began merging those positions, worked with the unions, negotiated, merging them into essentially a utility maintainer 1, a utility maintainer 2, utility maintainer crew leader, truck driver, and equipment operator. And that's how we function within operations today. And every single one of those utility maintainers can do all the work within those 5 divisions in operations. And recently we brought in the command center as well, so there is a 6th division, but it's in a separate department. So with that being said, when we moved forward with this, it was a substantial effort to get what we had specific people working on hydrants, but they took the opportunity to expand their career, promotional opportunities, potential for pay increases. They moved forward, so we set up training programs to get every single one of those employees on track to take on those new skills and abilities. So right now, what we end up doing is, and it seems to be working out well. Talk a lot with a lot of the new hires. We put them on essentially a 13-week rotation. So they go through our repair department 13 weeks, learn the repair group. Then they go on the maintenance side, learn everything about maintenance, and we keep them fresh. So in an event, we always pick up, like right around now, typically, I'll knock on wood, we have a lot of water main breaks during the winter. So we have to fluctuate whether there's more crews available in the repair department versus maintenance, and some maintenance we can't do during the winter. So those are the types of things that we're always trying to work on, balancing the workload with the staff that we have. Specifically, just recently, probably in the last 2-3 years, when John Fleming took the manager of operations role, we went through, and there's about 45, 50 unique processes within operations, different variants. But we looked at each one of them and said, hey, is there a better way of doing this? And we met with the supervision and said, hey, can we take a repair crew from 6 to 5? And to be honest with you, I don't think what these guys were able to accomplish coming out of that was a huge improvement where the crews are staying really busy, everyone's working, and what we ended up looking at was sort of the third bullet there is, if we know, we always have a backlog. We're always operating on a backlog in operations, and we're always prioritizing, triaging different work activities. Is there a way to bundle work together? So, I want to say it's about 3, maybe 4 years ago, we had a challenge in East Hartford. We had about 70 renewals we needed to do associated with a reconstruction project, street reconstruction project. And they were doing the street, and we were popping services and water leaking everywhere. And I asked John, I said, can we have a crew do 2 services a day? And in some cases, I think they were doing 2 or 3 a day. And the staff just jumped on that and said, you know what, hey, even if we work, instead of 8 hours, we work 2 additional hours, we were able to get 3 jobs done, typically we would have done 1. So those are the types of challenges that we put on our staff, and think of different ways of doing what we do, using different tools, using different equipment to get the work done, help drive down costs. So that's just a little update on how we've been able to manage this. We'll get into each of the divisions right after this, but I did want to show this. So as part of that, we started tracking the number of work orders pretty regularly. When Scott came in, and what I did was part of that management study is go back and take a look at, well, we've actually been able to increase the amount of activities we've done year after year. Meanwhile, drive down what we actually need on staffing. And I think we've come to a point now where this is it. I think we're basically maxed out as how low we can go. Just wanted to bring this up as a sort of a reorganizing. Operations can't do this all alone, and we'll talk about other things, the extensive coordination with engineering, as well as the maintenance staff. We support, just as they support us, the plant maintenance department on our pump stations, whether it be sewer, water, our storage facilities across our distribution system. And one of the other areas is plant maintenance and the inventory group within maintenance. We've had a lot of challenges since COVID, and then previously to that, we've made steady improvements on how do we make sure we have the right materials to tackle the jobs we have. And without the added challenge of our accelerated water program too, of making sure that we have the right materials. So there's a lot of coordination efforts that operations communicating with our inventory group as well as engineering to make sure this happens. I mentioned failure events and responses. I put a couple pictures in here. Again, again, it's 24/7. We do have a department that is 24/7, our command center. They're the initial response. They do the assessment and make sure the right crews are coming in to address it. I put a couple in there. Top one was a limb liner failure. If we could run the video just real quick, just to give you an idea. This is what the water was looking like. This we identified when the liner failed. These are our cameras going in and assessing the sewer at this. So these are our staff putting a camera device down the sewer, which is essentially like a remote control car with a camera on it. They can go up to it and assess what the damage is. So we were using this tool out Friday night on Vine Street, assessing what the issues were, so we know how much pipe repair do we have to make, what's the conditions we're facing, make sure we're bringing out the right material to address it. So hugely important. This one, this is our response, our assistance with a deep contractor following. Recall, I believe it was end of June, early July, with Connecticut Airport Authority and one of their hangars had a PFAS release, basically a fire foam release, fill up the entire hangar. They ended up draining to our collection system in Windsor, and ended up getting to the Quantic plant. But we were assisting Deep's contractor this time, so it's the middle of the night. Our staff's out there with Deep's contractors trying to assist to make sure we can collect as much of this PFAS, opening up manholes, make sure their equipment's there, as well as our treatment staff that were basically working 24/7 at a one-shift plant to make sure we could ensure that there's hopefully not much PFAS. If there's a way to work with the Deep contractors, we were there. I'll stop that. But, other pictures, this was recently in August, a contractor that was doing the I-84 improvements, basically a widening of the highway and putting in a breakdown lane, put their rock hammer through our 54-inch water transmission main. It was a little worrisome when I first got the call. We had staff there. These typically don't break, so they're built like tanks. But when one of these starts hammering on it, it will break. Luckily, in about 5 days, that was the period right there in the bottom right is when we were making the repair 5 days later. That doesn't happen by chance. That happens because of the folks in operations, the supporting departments, engineering, plant maintenance, inventory. They made that happen. We had that material there from Illinois shipped. It took 2 days to reach the site, and we were putting it together the next day. So a lot of hard work went into that. Also, this was sort of what we came across, sort of the middle picture on Limbrook, October 2018. This is what our staff came to, and we're going to show some other pictures of how we prepare for these and what things we do in advance so we can react to these, as well as some of the. So this slide here is some of the things that we have available to us. And frankly, I can tell you there's other utilities, large utilities in Connecticut, water utilities that call us to address some of their emergencies. They're not prepared as us, as well as sort of the engineering behind how do I bypass the pump station. And we've gone out and assisted with it, whether it be a large pump to bypass one of their pump stations, so the pump on the left. We have a hosing kit, and some of this will get into some of the improvements that we made. Cleaned up all our trailers, make sure we have the right hoses. Everything's easy to find. That's one of the trailers there, and then the top right is. We're able to quickly deploy those. This is a picture actually from the afternoon of the first day of Limbrook. We have the street pump down, we have the bypass pumping set up, and we're essentially cleaning the street at that point. So this is the response that our operations department has in emergency events. So one of the brought up in the management study was how do you measure performance? And that's something that I've seen since I've come to the district. That's steadily improved.
it really wasn't, especially in operations, but since I started working for Scott in 2008 into where it is now, some of the high level things that we do on the maintenance side, specifically like having hydrants to run a flush on a daily basis, and sewers, having cleaning we need to do with a jet truck, TV, so we need to catch basins we want to touch a day. So these are ultimately, we have seen requirements. There's things that we need to do to maintain our system, but there's also things that we touch pipes once a month. Certain pipes we go back once a month because of debris, grease, and it's just what's being discharged to those pipes. So those are basically our frequent pipes that we have to go clean. But that's we set these metrics up to meet our regulatory requirement, but also make sure that we're doing the right work at the right time and we can ensure that it's getting done. So I'll go through some of these. I may help out best. In this case, it's operations repair, but Pete and John helped me try to go through what we track. Carol Barber's been doing this job ever since I first met her, tracking routing and breaks for us over the years. But what we want to be able to do, and some of this is what we're doing with the accelerated routing, is we want to be able to not make the situation worse, right? So we saw a steady increase over the years of routing and breaks. So we went through and put the investment in to replace router mains. Right now, we're at a good place right now where the number of breaks are basically flatlined. We'd like to drive it down, but it's flatlined right now. So that's these are some of the photos. This picture on the top left is our guys repairing the 54-inch router main on the side 84. Matt and Pete are the bottom picture in front of McDonald's. That's East Hartford, and that's still side of Barsack, yeah. Manchester line, yeah. And then this is a picture of our guys cutting a pipe after a break. This could, I don't think it's Burnside, but this is when the pipe actually breaks. We have to take it apart, put a new piece in and connect it. This typically happens within 6 to 8 hours. All the customers are back on afterwards. So we want to turn on these things, and especially busy roads like Burnside. These guys get a lot of credit for that. We also do the repairs on the sewers. Again, we track new services going in. And you can see over the years, ever since the accelerated wire, operations has this new challenge of not only supporting the work that we have to do to make sure that our customers have sewer service, have water service. Now we have to support our contracts, so we're putting the water mains in. So we've gone from sorry, I can't read the numbers. About 200 a couple of years ago at taps, now we're over 1,000, pushing 1,300 taps a year. And that's our staff. We're finding different ways of doing it. I remember when I was first in operations years and years ago, it was over 4-man crew. I was on 2.
Because just explain tap.
Yeah, so we put a new water main in. I didn't do any tapping quotes or anything, but we try to bring as much show and tell as possible. But so when the new water main goes in, there's no penetration to that water main. So we actually have to drill and basically a valve that sticks in there, and basically that's the new pipe outlet that services that house. And we have to extend new copper, reconnect to the old. And that's essentially it. And we're going to get into what that sort of looks like when we talk about the meter pits a little bit more, but that's really it. Some of these other photos, if you have a sewer backup, that's what it typically looks like right there. You'll see it coming up in the manual. We have to quickly assess where it is, potentially put the camera in there. But at the meantime, we're deploying some of our equipment and being internally to talk about some of the auto shows. We have the capability of pumping around with a mobile pump on a jet truck, combo truck that actually pump to another manhole, so we can start drawing this sewer down immediately. And here's some repairs that we've done. I don't know if that was in Caper Street in Hartford, but the middle one. So quickly going through this is sewer maintenance. I'm going to show some videos. The one on the left, jet truck. That basically is a hose, high pressure hose. Attorney, how we are, but you guys have been doing this for a long time, but
Jet trucks probably, most trucks about 800 feet of hose on them, high pressure hose. Just, they shoot upstream against the flow, takes the grease and sediment out of the main line. And they routine street by street, town by town yearly. We have, like you brought up before, we have monthly routine jet truck stops that we make and routine basis of towns.
and one of the, these guys sold me, and I had to Scott on to purchase this next piece of equipment, but it saves us an incredible amount of time. And Scott was 100% behind it, but we use it's a recycler. So the truck on the left, we actually have to fill the water tank up, and that's what we use alpha hydrant, and that's what we use to jet it. Or hook up to a hydrant and it's continuous. The recycler is we can take out to anywhere. It only has to take a water, but when we're cleaning, we're actually pushing that water back. It sucks up the water and also the grit, separates the grit from the water, and we reuse that water. So we call it the recycler truck, but it is a standalone truck that allows us to do a lot more sewer and some difficult positions as well too. So
So you have so you have four gentlemen there working, and with the new equipment you have two. So that's how you do more with less. Use technology to do more with less, right?
yep. So in this case, it used to be like two crews doing the same thing. We have a new piece of equipment, two maintainers doing it now. Let's see if this.
Also on sewer maintenance, I discussed was what we have four vehicles. One is an off-road vehicle that allows us to do
CTV inspections of our sewers. So again, like a control car with a tether unit, we can drive it up and down the sewer and do an inspection. All of our staff that operate this are all certified, so there is a national standard on how to grade pipes. So when the information comes back to us in operations or engineer, we can make quick decisions on what pipes need to be repaired, what pipes we can defer maintenance on based on the grade of the condition that exists. So here's some examples. We saw a video of the pipeline collapse, but this is our staff, well-organized trucks, great equipment. We've gone through multiple iterations of different vendors for this, but set up routine now where we can quickly get out there. We do have issues with equipment, quickly swap it out so our production stays up. This group also is responsible for our CSO, SSO cabinets. So all the regulators we have in our system, we have to measure what's going over those rears. And I'll back up a little bit. So our CSO structures are when there's a heavy rain event, a wet weather event. On a dry day, all the sewage, all the domestic sewage goes to the treatment plant. But on a really heavy rainstorm, all those catch basins are connected to the combined sewer. All that water gets in, there's not enough capacity. So there's overflow structures, basically relief structures that say, all right, now it's starting to rise, so we can back up homes. It's going to go over here, go into a drainage pipe, and goes into a well body. So that's why we have our consent decree and consent orders to limit that as much as possible, with certain standards. So, but we need to measure that, and that's what Dean and Tony's group does as well. Their staff goes out there and maintains all that instrumentation. So we basically have control boxes on corners of certain streets, intersections, sides of streets, house all this equipment, and we can get this equipment in real time, or get this information in real time when there's a problem in our system. We also use this equipment as well to monitor our system as well. So with flow meters, level sensors, if we start seeing our sewer climb up in a dry period, we know we might have a problem downstream that's causing this flow to start increasing in height. So that's automatic. We'll send our crews out to start jetting the line, hopefully bring it down, address the problem, send the CCTV truck in there to see what the problem is, and address it accordingly. So, yep. I think we talked about this a lot in road meetings and public works, but there's about 6,600 catch basins in the city of Hartford that we maintain, the MDC maintains. We track this through some software, so we deploy iPads out with our staff that go out and do these. They're able to measure how much of that catch basin is full of debris. And our rule is, cities MS4 permit is over 50%. Those need to be cleaned more often, but that seems to be the trigger within the MS4 that it should never get there. So what we're doing now is we're proactively communicating with the city of Hartford, and believe it or not, like Lee Frank brought up his credit, we've been working with them to try to direct them to areas where we're seeing the debris actually increase and say, hey, we're on problems with these catch basins. You need to deploy street cleaning more often, more frequently, whatever it may be, or look to remove cars from the curb to remove the debris. So it's been working out well. Hopefully less street flooding for the residents, because that's really the cause. So what Scott was talking about in theory, and Napier, the Bureau of Public Works area.
Mr. Rogers mentioned the gutter grate.
Yes, sorry. So
The stainless steel.
yeah, so there's been discussions of, and what we did following August 19th, late August and September storms in 2021, so we were finding a lot of debris, specifically in Albany Avenue, Park Street, Broad Street, and other areas of Hartford, where the debris was actually coming in, where the garbage can was tipping over, debris coming in from the street and getting into our catch basin, which was affecting and allowing the street to properly drain. What we were able to do was to say, hey, our biggest issue is the larger debris. So the leaves and the sand, the grit that comes into the street wear, that's all going to go through that grate there. But what we want to be able to do is prevent the bottles from, and if you look at the catch basin, they have an opening, there's an inlet on that curb. That's what we were preventing with those grates to block that. So the water can get through, and the sand and the grit, those type of things will get through. And we can manage that, but it was the bottles that were causing an issue, similar to what we're seeing in the north end of the Main Street as well.
Chris and Scott, I think the city has done a better job, and since we started, what was it, about 2 years ago?
The city has done a very good job cleaning Albany Avenue, which has been very helpful.
And the side streets too, I think, have improved.
Yep. So these are the plan, but it also has alert the city DPW as well, is the trash just doesn't disappear. The catch basins aren't the trash cans anymore, and it allows them to visually see, hey, there's trash being built up against these catch basins. Let's make sure the street cleaners go out there. So. Now this is in conjunction with Hartford Flood Commission. The MDC has a number of outlets that go to different water bodies, specifically the Connecticut River. So the MDC has put together operations flood control procedures. This is an association, so MDC leads us with the city of Hartford of what the measures we have to take as the Connecticut River rises. So I forget exactly, it was 30 steps? Yeah, 20, 30 steps. But between the MDC, the city of Hartford, and the other entities have to perform so the Connecticut River doesn't come back through and flood parts of Hartford. So we're closing gates. That flow gets getting diverted to some of the pump stations, the flood control pump stations. But these are specific steps that we follow. We'll maybe talk more about it when command center, but we initiate those, but our operations staff goes and performs all these operations as well as maintenance these large gates. I did include this is a photo of outfall M2. There's discussion as far as the flood control within the North Main Street Park River. So this was taken, I believe, September. We had met with a couple of residents within the Grand area and took a look at the North Main Street Park River. So still see that flap right there. That's about 3/4 of the pipe, which is a 54-inch pipe that's coming out there. So just with the river elevation there, so these are some of the things that our staff we go out there, we check this, and make sure that our system can perform as we discussed. There is some work needed on the north branch of the park area to make sure that this water gets out of Granby Blue Hills neighborhood. So those are certain activities that this group performs as well. Hydrant maintenance, again, 10,200 hydrants that we do. This is how we measure it. We're already at every point. As you can see, there's a lot more maintenance activities than hydrants. So within the maintenance group, so a sewer maintainer could be doing sewer maintenance work in the fall. Come the spring, they're out there flushing hydrants for us. So we're multifaceted in there that we could take staff that are doing one thing, the following month they're doing something else. So this is somewhat of a seasonal opportunity, and we see sort of fluctuations within the numbers, which showed us that what we really accomplished with the combination of those job positions allowed us to, I think, was there maybe 8 people in the hydrant department, power consolidation. In some cases, we're doing 0 activities in that month on certain hydrants. So now we're taking those 8 individuals and applying to somewhere else where the work is needed. So, but this is how we measure it, and this is continuous every month. We're putting these numbers in, seeing how we're doing against our goals moving forward. I will see if I can.
So hydrant maintenance serves 2 purposes, right? It cleans the pipe, it scours the pipe, and it provides, it's a water quality issue, but it also makes sure that that hydrant is available for fire protection for our communities, fire departments, for any emergencies that might occur. So it's very, very important. It seems simple, and it is, but it is very important part of our responsibility.
Yep, and yeah, and it's interesting because everyone thinks, well, we're just maintaining the hydrant, but it's actually, Scott mentioned, scouring the pipe, flushing them, because we want to make sure that water is as clean as possible. And like everything, it's cast iron, concrete line, cement line pipes, but those little particulate slabs settle in, so we need to flush that out, get that out. Cleanest water possible for drinking. So hopefully this works. That's done almost 13,000 times, including private hydrants on an annual basis, that same exact activity. So what it allows us to do is also, this department, I'll just talk to the slide that's there, but our staff through Command Center organizes the meeting for us, but our staff present, and recently with COVID, it's been sort of like in a 9-month period, but what we're trying to get back to is a semi-annual, prior to COVID, is meeting with the fire marshals and the fire chiefs, and going through some of the issues they have, as well as some of the things that we're doing as well. So we're continuously changing our operations, different things that we're doing, whether it be hydrant locks. This group goes out and investigate potential theft from hydrants. So water is important, right? A lot of contractors use it, landscapers. So what we're always attempting to do is finding where are those sources of potential theft of our water. So what we've done, and it was a huge improvement. It was about 8 years ago, Scott, or so, we put a bulk water machine at our operation. So any tanker truck,
the pool water fillers can all come into our operations area. Landscapers, contractors, highway contractors that are doing dust control, they could fill up their tanker. We charge a flat fee. It was $50. It's now $75 on a fill up. So this used to be a very cumbersome process, and we changed it where previously we used to write down how many gallons they use. We used to give it the billing, and we probably lost money on the whole process when it came down to it. But now it's through basically a credit card charging company, and in comes the revenue every time. So really no management of ours, but it's a big improvement.
Prior to 2006, staff would tell me that they're going out to fill pools. And I said, what? You what? And they're in front of the yard, and we're like, this is not what we should be doing. So that's where we got the machine.
At the end of December, 376 accounts that are still estimated, but that we're continuously going through. And luckily, with the mild winter, we've been aggressively going at it. So our repair crew goes in and installs one of those big white meter pits in front of the properties. So when it's ready, we're ready to take that meter out of that home, put it in that pit with that new radio frequency device, which we'll get into. But this is how we monitor it. This is basically a photo of our staff replacing the meter, and we could go into some of the things that we do inside the properties. But the key thing here is that what we are continuously doing is we monitor this on a monthly basis of where our estimated accounts are. So we get our staff out there, because like anything, things break, these RF devices break. So we're going to go out there, make sure they get a new one, make sure we can get that read automatically, because we never want to get to a point where we have 40% of our customers as estimated accounts. We're down to 0.3% now.
And in the reverse, we also right-sided the larger meters. So for example, we would have no flow on a large meter because I'll use Pratt & Whitney as an example. You know, they were using lots of water back in the day, and now they're using very much less. So their meter was oversized. So we weren't getting a proper reading, and they weren't getting properly billed for the water usage. So we went out and changed out those meters to have the right size meter for the right consumption.
So will get reiterated when engineering, because like I said, operations, all the departments, we're not going at this alone. There's a lot of communication, there's a lot of discussion, there's a lot of meetings, weekly meetings, especially even with the departments down on Maxim Road, continuous meetings. But a lot of this is driven by engineering as far as the technology improvements that we're doing with our meter, but ultimately the execution, the management of it is occurring in operations. So just to give you some understanding, as I mentioned, 42,000 accounts were estimated back in 2008. And we went through 4 phases, and we had struggles. I bet it was about 6,000 or 7,000. We were discussing it this morning, where we just weren't able to get our contractor to replace meters. And we deployed, we worked with our command center, our customer service to set up appointments. We were quickly able to go through that, and we got it down to about 1,000 customers that didn't have, they were still estimated. And since then, we've been trickling down over basically the last 2 years, and then obviously took a deeper cut this past year with our no-access shutoffs that we were doing. But just to give you an understanding on the technology, previously we basically had a mechanical meter. As the water went through, it turned something, and that turn ended up changing a dial. Right now, what we've upped our technology to do ultrasonic, so there's no moving parts in there. It basically uses a frequency to read how much water is passing by through a fixed area, and we could tell and get much better accuracy. The customers get much better accuracy reads in billing, and typically with the older ones, those older ones actually were reading less. So in some cases, it's improving our district, improving our rates, as well as accounting for the water more accurately. So what leaves the plant, we should be able to capture in the meter at the customer's property. So we're also moving towards, and
It'll be at the next Water Bureau meeting, our advanced meter infrastructure. So this is taking what Scott started in 2008, where we have these radio frequency devices. It takes a vehicle to drive by. There's no more sending in a card with your information of here's my meter read. That went away. What we're able to do now is drive through a neighborhood and get those automatic reads. That information comes back, we populate it into our billing system, and the bills go out. What this is going to do is allow us to get real-time reads of all of our customers through a fixed network and a cellular network as well, and it all comes in. The best part of this is we're going to be able to define when someone has a leak. So in the middle of the night, 1 in the morning, someone's using water consistently. Say they're using a gallon an hour. Maybe they have a dripping toilet or their tank there. We can actually send out a notification, or in this case, we're going to have a portal for those customers to actually go in there and reach in there and get this information so they can better help manage their water bill as well. So great improvements on that, and we're looking to push this out later this year with some of this technology. So we'll have a longer conversation, a Water Bureau meeting on that. Maybe this is a good time for, if Scott, if you're okay, we'll do a show and tell what a meter pit is.
Yeah, let's do that.
JP, Matt, if you guys want to help me out.
Coffee break. Yes.
These guys put in hundreds of these a year. When we made this decision years ago, or a couple years ago, I think we only maybe had, 7,000 of them out of our 100,000 services had these. We're putting over 1,000 of them a year between us and our contractors. So they're nice devices, and we'll talk about some of the drivers that we do, but you guys can go ahead.
No, basically, the whole purpose of the meter pit is so we don't have to go into the homes anymore. Like a lot of people don't like to do the COVID and all the incidents. That will go out. They're going to be meter pit. They'll call me. So the biggest problem we're having is getting into the homes after the meter is installed. So we'll go out with a meter. They'll put a meter pit in. Biggest issue with it, like meters are supposed to be changed out every 15 years because they do time out. But once we get all those meters, we can get about 1,000 meters. We do a pilot program. We can send 10, whatever, as many guys as we want, and we can change the meter. Just let the homeowner know we're going to interrupt your service for maybe a half, 20 minutes or a half hour, and change the meter out and put a new meter in. But that's the biggest thing. What I really love about these meter pits is we will not have to basically bother the homeowner because it's so hard. Like you said, we have accounts that no access. There's some people that have not let us in their homes for maybe 10 to 15 years. We have not updated these meters. So once we get these meter pits in, that's it. We won't not, I mean, it's a tough sell with them because nobody wants us coming in, having a big pit in your front yard. But after the finished product, that's what it looks like after the finished product there. And I mean, it's actually not that bad. And we can even cover them up. We can we don't like to let them know, but you can cover them up at least to an inch. We like to leave it exposed like that, but you can cover it up to maybe a half an inch and you'll be able to still pick up a read.
Jay, you want to talk about how you guys work with the homeowner to pick the location of where you put these?
So basically, this is going at property line on every house. So right now, every property has a shut-off valve at street line or property line, we call it. So that is the shut-off point. If there's ever an emergency or a leak inside the home, Jay's guys or our command center guys in the middle of the night can access that and shut off the water. So this is getting installed right behind that shut-off, that access valve. So typically it's in the front yard. If you have a sidewalk, it's behind the sidewalk. We deal with landscaping, we deal with multiple issues in the way of, that get in the way of where we put it. But every time we put it in, it's going right behind that main shut-off valve at the property line.
Yeah, and I know you guys, a lot of these are coming out with our direction from our engineering. So if there's a project, maybe it's a town paving project, and we'll sort of get into some of the benefits that we get all the information from the towns for their next year's paving program. So we'll have our engineering group go through and identify all the services that are old, maybe old material that are prone to leaks,
we'll go and identify those services, we'll create the work orders, and the key thing is what we're doing is we're continuously notifying the customer that, hey, we have a program, we have a meter pit program, you have an old service. We also have a program to replace your service for our lien program. We voluntary lien to go through and basically a low interest rate loan to replace typically if our service is old in the street, theirs is old on the other side of the property line. So we communicate this out front. So the intent is when Pete and Matt get out there with the customer, they're sending appointments up with them, look to get a good spot that we can both agree to, is that's a good spot for that meter pit. And I want to say more than likely probably 98% of them are satisfied with it, but it's like anything. We address the other 2% accordingly, and if it's covering up a little bit and those type of things, we'll work with the homeowner on it. We haven't had a case where we haven't been able to resolve it. So that's really it. It's a lot of communication out front. These guys are continuously communicating. I know Matt probably gives out his cell phone number. They're calling him all the time. So, yeah. So this, and I really appreciate this whole group because it was a huge initiative to do, and it was a major challenge for our operations group, our engineering group, our construction group to execute this, because it is not easy to have a conversation with a customer about, you're going to put that big white thing. Well, it actually looks a little bit smaller when it's in there, and that's what we get at the end. So it looks disruptive, but we bring out these pictures and we show, hey, this is what it's going to look like in the end, and ultimately it works out well.
Commissioner Bush, I just want to make a quick comment. I've had a few of those installed in some of the properties I own, and I think you guys do a fantastic job. It's a very quick process, surgical. You get in, you do it, and it's very unintrusive, and never heard a complaint. The one thing I do want to say is, and this is not to you guys, but more to you and to the people that follow. So one of the issues that has come to my attention, especially in West Hartford, where some of the complaints are that the soil doesn't get replaced in an efficient manner. That has obviously nothing to do with you guys, and I just want to make sure to clarify that. I did get a couple of calls at the end of the summer last year from some of the homeowners who had brown patches or burned out. So it's really important for the reputation of everybody here, then the guys that are doing the hard work, that the landscape contractor that comes in at the end of it doesn't make all of the work that we do look less quality. It's really critical. I'd like to just make sure that
and
stay on that.
And that's a good point. Our engineering is always. That's the biggest problem or challenge with construction projects. It's always the restoration. How do you leave that site where it doesn't look like you were there? And we've had to deal with this, whether it's Newington, Weathersfield projects, West Hartford. Hartford is, when you're in a drought situation, it doesn't matter what you do. You can put as much hydroseed on that. The grass just never grows, unfortunately. We try to get it in the fall. If it doesn't work out in the fall, we'll be back in the spring. And we always ask the customer to be patient with us. It's really up to Mother Nature sometimes of how we can get this done. But no, it's a great point.
John, what's the life of the? That looks like it's metal. Is that metal, guys? Oh, is it PVC? Oh, I was just going to ask. I mean, how long is that going to last in the ground?
Longer than any of us.
The PVC usually has a life expectancy of over 100 years.
No kidding.
Yeah.
A lot of our current meter pits that have been in the system since the 60s or 70s are, like Jay said, clay tile. We have to actually repair them a lot of times because they're just crumbling and falling apart.
Or replacing completely.
Got it.
And the majority of times when we're going to do repairs, or even say we're doing the meter pit installs for the estimated reads, we're gonna have to dig it anyways because a lot of times the valves that are there, the shutoffs, the small valve, needs to be dug up in what we used to call a box and rod, which was just change the rod and the service box off, change those out. Now we're installing this and repairing that at the same time. So we're doing two jobs in one. So it was gonna be dug anyways, now we're just making a little bit of an extended hole and putting this in. And this actually gives us 3 valves now, because there's 2 valves inside and there's one on the out.
Very good.
And just to highlight, and Jay's group does all the meter appointments and everything. what takes us now 30 minutes to replace one of these meters in a meter pit, 30 minutes. We would still take 30 minutes to replace it, 45 minutes in a house. But leading up to that, we would spend hours trying to get the appointment with a customer, managing all those notifications, continuous notifications on that, where up to 4 hours per customer in certain situations. Now we're notifying them if we have to replace it in the meter pit, we replace it. They're not affected. They don't have to take time off of work. They don't have to take time out of their busy weekend if the weekends are the only time for them. So it saves us on overtime, but also allow us to make sure that we have the most accurate meters for our customers as well. So,
Well, let's go through the rest of
Yeah.
the show.
Yeah.
Okay.
yep. There's so those historically what we were issuing as a new connection would come in. So those sort of copper brass pipes that you have there in front of you, we were referred to as spacers. So what a contractor would do if they were building a brand new house, they would say, "Hey, I'm going to come in. I need to connect to the MDC water main." So we'd go in there, we do the tap, we run it. Ultimately, they're going to do all their internal plumbing. We would hand out one of these spacers to the contractor. They would give it to their plumber. He would make this connection. Now, prior to all this, what would happen is they were hollow, so these spacers would go in, and we'd never hear from the customer again.
Yeah, because he was on.
And years would go by, and they would get free water. They would say, "Oh, there's all these houses there, but no meters." So Scott, when he first came in, he was like, what do we do in these meters? So there was no tracking system. We had no idea where they were going. And what ended up happening, we gave out so many of them, the contractor would just use them from the next job to the next job or make them themselves. So now what we're doing, even with the meter pits now, I think we issued about 6 spacers, well, typically larger ones that we have to do for customers is, but with the meter pit program, those all go away because what we're doing is when that service goes in, the pit goes in, meter goes in immediately. So and then they're extending back into the house or whatever for it. So that's one huge advantage. But that was, I don't know how much revenue we create or we're not necessarily able to generate, but capture that we should have been capturing all those years. So one other point, even with this meter pit, is we're giving the customer, as we go and we remove the meter from the basement of the property, typically there's old plumbing, right? So they might have a wheel valve. So you've probably seen them. They look almost like hose bibs in your basement. They don't work. They typically leak. So when we go in there, we'll shut off the service. We'll actually our guys have nice tools. We don't do any soldering, so there's not hot work permits down the basement. Basically use a tool now, crimps the pipe together, and we give them a brand new isolation valve, ball valve. Should last for decades. So
The valve will be right where the meter is now. Like this will be where the meter is. We'll take the meter out and there'll be a ball valve there. So now a lot of people are really happy because now they go down. You have, like you said, you have the old heat valve. You go down, you have this valve, you take a half turn, fill some water in the house, and half of them don't even know that their valves are not even working. Some of the valves don't even work. You will have to go shut it off outside prior to installing the meter. So.
We would actually save homeowners money by installing a new meter pit and replacing their valve. The valve was leaking when we got there. So we were able to replace the valve, give them the meter pit, move the meter, all at the same time. And it was one job. Customers were super happy. That was
with all the little wires that were going to the radio frequency, those are all bye-bye. And the device says on the side of the house, it's in the pit. They basically get their basement and the side of the house back as well. So there's a couple more items. A lot of them are the repair sleeves and the couplings. So these are, so in the middle of the night, we get a water main break. Some of them, we basically classify them as 2. We have what we refer to as a split around, which is a leak. So there's the majority of leaks we can take care of without actually having to shut the water main down. And it's unfortunate. I've been out to a lot of these. We've never videoed them. I really wanted to show this to you because essentially there is a piece of pipe that's either cracked or missing, but it's a little piece. We can actually put this sleeve around and actually compresses around the pipe.
Like a giant Band-Aid.
Yeah. Basically stops the bleeding. But in the process, and what we see in our folks are out there a night like tonight, addressing one of these, and the water's going everywhere. They put the sleeve on one part of the pipe, slide it over, tighten it down, the leak stops. In the process, they get really wet, but that's what we do to make sure. And the customers never they're running their washing machine, they're running their dishwasher, taking showers. They never get affected. The other ones are a little bit different, where we have the major blowouts, which you call a burst, basically. That's when we have to shut down the water main. And we've made some sort of strategy choices of what materials we use to repair these. Historically, there's been your traditional mechanical joint. We tie these things together with bars and everything. But Matt, why don't you tell them about this coupling?
So we call this a DP sleeve. It's a dual purpose. So what we used to have previously, when we had to make a connection, we had a multi-bolt sleeve which used compression going against itself. And that's what tied two pieces of pipe together. What we've moved to is a 2-bolt system, which allows us to change the size by just simply pulling the gasket out. And this allows us to have two sizes in one, which we used to have multiple size sleeves previously. And it allows us to simply slide it over and ratchet it down rather than trying to get almost like on your car, if you tighten the bolts down on a multi-purpose sleeve down too tight in one direction on the old sleeves, it would leak again. With this, we have no issues. And what it does also is it holds the pressure of the pipe is on this single band rather than compressing out. It's held tight. So these have saved us countless hours in the field.
So in the case of a real bad blowout of pipe, we have to replace sections of pipe, which could have took us a couple hours. Put these sleeves on both ends, put the pipe together. We're having that thing back together 6 hours. And that includes the response time to make sure we do the call before you dig properly, excavate, and backfill. So it saved us a lot of time addressing it. One, so we can go to the next repair if it's middle of the winter, but also to make sure the customers get their water back on as soon as possible. So, we got any more? Is that it for the?
Right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Taylor?
Appreciate you volunteering your
Yeah.
time tonight, by the way.
Thank you, Danny. Question for you. If you have someone that does not allow you to get into their home, but let's say, could we put one of those in lieu of, and then read the water consumption off of that?
Yeah, so that's our standard right now. So last year, we started off with the Water Bureau. We made a presentation. So within our water ordinances, we are allowed to do shutoffs if we cannot access. So the meter is actually our equipment. That's our property within the customer's. We wanted to discuss it with the board that we were going to move forward this program, but we've actually had to do a couple shutoffs with customers, and they've immediately called and say, yes, come take my meter now. I understand now I'm estimated. My wife wants the water back on, so please come take the meter and put it out in the pit. But what we do in advance is we put the meter pit in, because we all know what's going to happen, right? They're not going to let us back in again if that person's going to stay in that property again. So we make sure the meter pit's there before we have to go do the shutoff. But it allows us, as Matt was discussing, when we do have to go shut off, half of the time, those curb shutoffs, the ones on the property lines, breaks. So we're out there digging anyways. So we might as well do it between 7:30 and 4 on regular time. So that's what we do. We try to be proactive and get these in advance of those shutoffs. So we're also doing that as well with a number of our non-payment customers as well too, as getting these in because they are important. Also allows us to do shutoffs as well quicker in those cases. So I'll quickly go through. Oh, sorry.
Where are we in terms of, when, are we able to finally get a real number?
Yes.
And what happens then?
Yep, so what we do is we'll take the read, we'll enter the read based on the old meter, that goes in, I'll do my best, Kelly, just jump in, but we send that into customer service. Now, it could be a credit or a debit to the account. We don't know at the time, but we put the read in, and it's either gonna say, hey, you're below what we've always been estimating, so if over 10 years, maybe they're at what we think is the meter should read 1,000, and it really reads 800. Well, guess what? They get a credit for the 200. So those are what we end up, and then what Kelly's staff does is they actually interpolate it across the years that they haven't been in the reads against what our rates were over those years. So they're getting a fair value of what the credit should be, or in the case of what the debit of the account is, if they need to pay us. So that's how we look at it.
And if it's a debit, how do we collect that?
Well, hopefully the customer pays through, and it's going to be modified on their next bill with an understanding that this is basically your catch-up. We do offer the payment programs as well. So, and then Kelly's group handles that as well. But these guys are just make sure we get the meter and make sure the read gets in and accurately we read the meter. And then again, it's a well-oiled machine, so every department has to work with each other, and that's when we hand it off. But we try to get the most accurate information over to them.
To what do you attribute the decrease in the breaks on those water mains? Because you said that it's kind of come down and stabilized.
Yeah, so we've, a couple of years ago, Scott challenged us, and I wanted to bring it up because what the challenge was is how do we replace more water main on an annual basis? So the challenge, the bar was set, we got to get to 10 miles. In some years we've exceeded that, but what we were able to demonstrate in working with engineering, we actually had our operations crew demonstrate water main replacements in a accelerated fashion. So that we took that model and brought it to our contractors, got the value through our contractors to bring that. I think we did about 2.5, 3 miles one year just within operations. We extended that out. Now their role is to support our contractors too, as long as all the other work that we have to do. So now we have 1,100 taps associated with that 10 miles of water main that we have to do on an average basis. So that's what our sort of goal is. Once we start replacing water mains, we got the most troubled areas first. We started seeing those more frequent ones, and we're continuously monitoring that. We put systems in now where engineering is giving the feedback. We have about a 3-year plan now where we know this year what we're replacing, 2024, 2025, and we're forecasting out to 2026 this year of where we're going with our water main replacements. So we use a bunch of different tools. Scott?
And just to add to that, Commissioner, Chris showed, it was a 2008 graph that he did for me, and that was up on the screen, one of the first couple of screens. What we showed there in 2008 was our backlog was growing so exponentially. You can't catch it. You can't fix it fast enough, right? You can't add enough crews to fix those breaks. The only way to catch the curve is to put new pipe in the ground faster. And the way that we did installation of water main in the past was we would get our approval from the board for a budget. We would try to coordinate those priorities with the town paving programs because they're paving every spring. And then we're designing it a year and a half, and then we're bidding it and building it for 18 months. So that was too long. We're taking too long to execute the installation of the water main. So we came up with the accelerated water main program, which is we have 3 contractors, right? Three contractors.
Yep.
There, we bid it we're asking those contractors to give us pricing, not on a specific project, but a pricing, crew cost, equipment cost, materials cost, and we know what, and we're actually providing the equipment now as part of our program, but now we can execute a project with we're not going through a full design. We're going through probably more of like a 50% design, and then we have qualified contractors that we trust, and we initiate that design quicker. We build it quicker, and that's how we've been able to get to 10 miles a year. I mentioned in the budget cycle back in 2018, we had 120 water main breaks in 2018, January 2018. And I had a discussion with my friend in Boston Water and Sewer, John Sullivan, and he had told me they had 3 breaks that year. We had 120. But the difference was Boston's Water and Sewer, they were replacing 27 miles of water main a year up until 2017. Now they're down to 10. And even our DPH wants water utilities to replace 10% of water mains a year, which is impossible. We've got 1,500 miles, 1,600 miles of water main. 10% is 150 miles. You can't afford it. So we said what we will do is we'll do at least 10. And that's how we've seen it just stabilize and allow our crews to focus on other things.
Okay. Any other questions?
Okay, so I'll fly through this. So there was legislation 2 years ago that required all municipalities to coordinate with utilities on their paving program. So we get feedback towards the end of the year, what they're doing the following year. We set up a system now where it runs through engineering. An engineer is assigned to go through each town's paving program and identify any of our infrastructure that is old, needs to be replaced, and we find a vehicle to go through this. So I just wanted to mention that our vehicles are, operations department does a lot of them. We also use contractors to address any of our deficiencies with our infrastructure. Because the last thing we want is the town to go through, pave a street, and we get a water main break. And now the resident that had that water main break right in front of their house has a big old ugly patch in front of their house. That's a sin for us. So we'll keep moving on. Again, tightly knit engineering, procurement, ops, our utility services. We've gone through, identified a lot of savings within operations. Quickly go through, there's some pictures later on, but we had looked at how do we manage our materials better. One, so we're not handling materials multiple times. We've actually put in bins in the back of our facility at 125 Maxim Road to store. Put it there, they dry, especially the grit, because what was occurring was we were getting larger grit disposal fees by directly sucking the grit out of the catch basin and then delivering it to it. They would charge us not only for the grit, but also the water that was in the grit. So we set up basically a drying facility for all that debris and that grit before we dispose of it properly through our contracts. So we basically cut that. A lot of it was 60% water, so basically cut the cost 60%. Material procurement contracts is tight coordination between inventory procurement and operations, continuously monitoring our material standards. As Pete and Matt discussed, that blue repair sleeve, we never had that probably, 5-7 years ago. So we're continuously looking at, hey, is there a better way to do this? So through trade shows, whatever. One of the biggest components, and we saw this coming out of COVID, is our ability to maintain proper traffic control. And prior to this, about 5 years ago, we made a conservative effort to seek out, work with the local police departments, identify what streets we could use flaggers on, make sure we're in unison of when we go with our contracts, how we were going to maintain traffic. Just on ops alone, and we'll get into the savings that engineering has done based on where we were and where we are now, they save about $300,000 a year with the use of flaggers versus what we've historically just used the police department to support our traffic control. So huge plus there. And then ultimately looking at what other, if there's state contracts to support large projects that these folks, Knox operations do. We have some fairly large water main breaks where we're replacing a good stretch of road. We'll go look to not just use our contract that we have set up with our restoration vendors, but look to utilize the state contract that gives us better value for our dollar.
I apologize for asking or making a comment. Unfortunately, I can't stay in this meeting, and I'm probably a little bit out of order, but I would like to just make a commissioner comment.
Sure.
Very quickly. So most of my day job, I spend driving around the streets and managing property, and I'm always doing some construction-related activity. And I just want to basically say that these guys here are what make all the rest of us look good, because they have a great public face. They're respectful, they're organized. They were on Lynbrook for a year, or whoever. I mean, I see it all the time. And I just want to give these guys compliments for the hard work that they do. If they don't get thanked ever, I want to be personally say thank you for what you do for the MDC, because it's a tribute to the rest of us, how good you make everybody look. So I just wanted to say that before I go, and especially the guy who directs you all over the place. I think he does a pretty good job, too. Dave Ruddy does a great job, and everybody. I couldn't be more proud to be part of this organization, representing you as well as everybody else. So thank you for everything that you guys do. And I know and I've gone out midnight, Chris calls me up, and we go out, and water main breaks at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. I mean, you guys are there. They're there. They're doing their job. They're not complaining. They're doing what they need to do. So thank you. Yep.
Thank you,
With
Commissioner.
that, I have to leave, so.
Thank you.
So we'll quickly go through, and we'll go through what, at a later slide, but I just wanted to bring up our staff takes a lot of pride in what they do, and they're always looking to make sure that what they're doing is at the highest level. That includes just making sure their trucks are organized. So believe it or not, we're actually doing some Lean and Six Sigma training, so we're learning how to do sort of like a 5S type process, where we're make it shine, whatever. But these guys already did that without even having to go through that education. Our compressor trucks, which are going out to the job sites to make a repair on a water main, are well organized. Materials where it's supposed to be. It's well maintained, the trucks. All of our equipment's there. So when we go out there, we're not running back to the yard because we forgot a part. This is very important. A lot of pride goes in there. There's a picture of the bins. It's hard to tell there, but I just wanted to pass this on, because when we respond to, and I think I sort of showed the pump trailers, when we show up with a pump trailer, we know we have to bypass the materials there, the pipes there. We're just putting it together, starting the pumps up, and it's sort of credit to our vehicle maintenance department too, that keeps that stuff running all the time as well. So I'm going to let Pete talk to this, because Pete's been a huge advocate for this and really spearheaded. We have a insertion valve program, and we're actually used as the example for multiple vendors of how this can be successful at a water utility. So Pete, if you don't mind, I want to let you talk to this.
So basically what you're looking at in these... Sorry, Pete, would you mind just getting...
Yeah. Or you can sit right here, please. If you want to sit right there. Yeah.
So what you're looking at in the middle picture is a
Move up to the
6-inch
mic.
insertion valve.
Make sure it's on.
It's on. So in the center picture, that's a 6-inch insertion valve. So that is a main gate or a valve for shutting down a water main. So normally to install a valve like that, you have to shut down the water main, which disrupts service, obviously, to all the homeowners, and cut in a new valve, which then you have to flush, sample. You can create other problems by shutting down the existing valves. So this valve here is put in live under pressure on a live main. So the picture on the left, that's the actual equipment in the machine which installs it. So it saves us a lot of time and a lot of work and a lot of headaches, and keeps the customers a lot happier because we don't have to shut down the water. Now, we started installing these. We bought the equipment in 2018. We did 7 the first year. Since then, we've been averaging 22 to 23 a year. So we're utilizing the equipment monthly, sometimes twice a month, and installing quite a bit of valves. Again, this is a great piece of equipment. It's Hydrostop is the company out of Chicago. They're actually using us for a lot of references for other customers and literature that they're sending out. So they've been a great company to deal with.
So in the case with this, we've gone in if we had all the money in the world, we would be replacing all the treble pipes. But in advance of that, of getting that funding supported from the board to go replace, and I'll use Silas Deane Highway as a perfect example. We have a lot of important customers on Silas Deane, a lot of businesses that need to stay open. What we've done, or what these operations have been able to do, is strategically go through there and install these valves. So when we have a break, we're closing these valves down, and we may only have to isolate 1 or 2 customers, not the entire stretch between intersections on Silas Deane. We've used these a lot in a lot of those areas around hospitals, critical facilities. It's paid dividends for us because when you put it in, guess what? The next day you're going to get a break there. And we've seen that occur where we've been able to react, go in there, we know we just installed the valve, shut it down, isolate it, so we're reducing the effect to our customers. So, but yeah, thanks, Pete. And it's great work that we've done on that.
We have 30-some-odd thousand gates in the system, right? So every time we have a water main break, if you remember 2008, we had Farmington Avenue water main break, and it was a disaster. And I think we had a 30 gate shut. When we say 30 gate shutdown, that means we had to shut 30 gates just to stop the water at the break. And since then, we've replaced lots and lots of pipe on Farmington Avenue. But the logic has always been, instead of trying to replace 30,000 gates under some project, why don't we simply add a new gate every time we're at some location or in preparation for a project that we know we've got gates and we have gate log and history of how gates operate and are they or aren't they working properly. So proactively, we're putting in gates throughout the system in preparation for other project or in preparation for a future shutdown because of another break. So it's a great job from operations.
Yeah, we have a couple of them to support the larger high-rises in Hartford, so we can sort of isolate their services and make sure that they can get fed one way if there's a break in between. It just allows us to control the water appropriately, so these businesses don't go out. If that break happens in the morning, they have to close up their office building. We never want to be in that situation.
Don't we have a bunch of them around the hospitals?
Yeah, and yes, and things like we've had historical events where the gates are spread out so far apart, you might have to shut down a nursing home that you don't want to shut down, but because you don't have a valve to isolate, the break from the nursing home, we wind up shutting everybody down. So that's what this does for us. So it's great.
Just to go through, we're going to talk more about this when Command Center Utility Services presents, but operations is a vital component to our emergency response. And we do hold, every time a heavy rain event, wind event, any type of weather event that's going to cause an issue to disrupt services in any one of our member towns, not only ours but theirs, we do hold wet weather events and bring the municipal departments in that conversation as well, explain what our staffing is going to be for that storm and how to reach us when they need our assistance as well. So just wanted to bring that up, and always a couple photos of things that happened to us. I think the photo on the bottom right is Whitney Street and I think the August 19th storm pipe. Yeah, it's the 54-inch on the side 84. Bottom left is in West Hartford. I'm not sure the top right, but those are, that's obviously a wet weather induced overflow at a manhole. So a lot of stuff here. This is one of the business product cost accounting operations. Scott mentioned, you can't really see it. I highlighted the ones. This was a slide that we worked on with all the departments as an evaluation of the management study. But right sizing meters are AMI, AMR. So these are all trying to do the right product costing, lower costs, but also make sure that we could track costs and make sure we got the right rates when we bring those rates to the board on an annual basis. Fire service fees, account validations, are we billing the right charges for those fire service? A lot of work goes in with this department as well as other departments to support that. Workforce planning, try to go through this as quick as possible. Our folks use a lot of digital tools, so a lot of technology gets pushed out. Our ERP system, SAP, that's where basically our work management system is. All our work orders are run through that system. That's how our work gets managed.
We are developing a mobile tool to bring that out, so it allows us to do more recording, more cost accounting associated with our labor. Also, our materials management runs through SAP as well, so every time we go out and make a repair, if we take a brass coupling out, one of those repair sleeves that's going on the work order, so it's managing our inventory counts, but also costing on the work order is appropriate as well. And it allows us to know what we have in inventory, so we can reorder. So it's sort of a well-oiled system, but I also want to bring this up. We're heavily used, and this is sort of our next iteration to developing the tools for the future of the district. Scott gave us a challenge about a year and a half ago to say, how do we take our record drawing process down from 2 years and give me something better? So I think we got something better, and we're presenting to Scott in a few weeks, but we were able to take a 2-year process of when we finish a water main, make sure all the records are done, everything's in the right folders, and we could look it up. It took 2 years. We got it down to 2 weeks now. Part of that is what we are doing in engineering, but also within operations. Every time we go out and make a repair, we're taking GPS coordinates of where we made that repair, so our records are more accurate. Historically, what we've been able to do is do a field sketch, draw the infrastructure that we changed, and then take basically a cloth tape measure and do swing ties, what we refer to it as, measurements off other existing assets, so we get a gate valve, a hydrant, those type of things. So those are fairly accurate, but not as accurate as the GPS, which is basically sub-inch accuracy, both horizontal and vertical. So this is, I had to say, what this group in engineering have been able to accomplish. I have not seen any other utility do exactly what we're doing. This process is very lean. And in fact, we're presenting to Scott before we present to some of our trade groups as well, this exact process. So.
But this is really important. It's not just the tool. It's not just this group. If you remember my presentation, operations wasn't allowed to do this back before 2006. We had very strict union, I do this, you do this, you do this. So the way that this worked was the operational staff wrote on a Dunkin' Donuts paper napkin the measurements, the swing measurements. It was sent up to engineering, and it sat on an engineering's desk to be reviewed, then given to drafting, then given to GIS, then notified another union person, the inspector, to go out and verify in the field. All because no one trusted the group here to do it themselves. So now they do it, and it's uploaded into SAP immediately, and everybody has the information in real time. Imagine having a water main take 2 years to build it, and in the middle of the night, that same water main breaks for some reason. Gas company hits the water main. The group here that's going to fix it doesn't have the information because it's still being processed. So the benefit of hopefully this presentation was everyone here is working together. Operations, engineering, customer service, command center, finance. Everybody's working together towards the same goal, which makes us do more with less.
And it's
Scott, what was the amount of money we spent in the SAPs when we reorganized SAP?
Yeah, so SAP, which we
That's the
we
computer
started.
process.
Yeah, so we started in 2016 planning. It really took us 2 years to plan. And really, MDC staff, including myself, went through a major learning curve on the issue and the technology. And then we executed and completed in 2018. We bid the 2018 RFP. We completed in 2020.
January 1st, yeah.
We went live January of 2020.
2020. And so in that process from 2016 to 2020, we spent about $20 million. But if you can imagine being at your house with your laptop and you get these pop-ups and it says you need to upgrade your software. MDC got 16 pop-ups since 1998. And what I mean by that is SAP was upgraded 16 times and we didn't upgrade with it.
Right.
And that's why it crashed in 2011. And we were spending about $750,000 a year just with a Band-Aid, just trying to keep it from crashing again. And that was a huge risk on everyone's part to upgrade that, because it was the only thing that was gonna allow us all to be more efficient.
Wasn't it because initially we designed it for us rather than designed it with the SAP system so it could?
Yeah, so if you remember, any of you that were here in '98, so we spent $20 million, and we had, almost everybody here was involved in that SAP upgrade. At the lowest level of the organization was involved in the SAP upgrade. They had a say in what was important to them for this information to be housed within this SAP system. But what we did in '98 was we were in a rush, and we only looked at departments. So we were building SAP by department, but there was no interaction with the we call them silos. There was no interaction with finance, with inventory, with customer service, spacers. There was no communication built into the system. And honestly, the SAP upgrade is just the software. The hard part is the business management of the MDC and how it needs to interact with each other, with each department. That's what took so much time.
It's the information.
It's the information that how you put it in, what information you want in, how it interacts with each department. And we had more than 150 people engaged in that process with consultants ourselves. We had consultants across country. It was a huge effort. And that's what wasn't done in '99. It was just, we implemented a software. And I would say this, the customer service manager at the time told me that when it was implemented in '98, they came down to her office and said, we're going live with SAP. And she hadn't had any input in the SAP upgrade. That's the difference between 1998 and 2016 through 20. So
It was
a lot of
considered,
work.
SAP was considered send another payment.
Yeah, but it's yeah, and we went through a huge learning curve because, you're really getting salesmen trying to sell you product, even at that level of software. They're trying to sell you things that you don't need. And we went through a huge learning curve on the HR piece. The software that they were trying to sell us wasn't, it hadn't been tested, it wasn't proven, it wouldn't work for us. And we didn't know that. And it took a lot of due diligence on our part and our staff's part to realize that, and we rejected it. We didn't use it. So, but a huge effort went into that.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
All right.
Go ahead.
Sarge. No, I just wanted to comment on Scott's last iteration of what transpired, and not to go into a long dissertation about it, but I was here when we bought that, and it was a difficult conversation. I think, Alvin, you probably were with us as well. And that conversation was quite difficult because we were determining that we would buy this product that we knew, even then, we had no idea what it could do, how we could do it, and could it in fact work. So sometimes you do have to take that chance and say, we're confident that the staff can actually handle this. And that's clearly what has transpired so far. And it just keeps getting better. And so you get yourself to a point where the whole thing now becomes integrated, and staff at all levels see where they fit and where they're part of this giant bowl of spaghetti that's really...
It's connected.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's remarkable.
Yeah, it's great.
And it's been interesting to be part of this ongoing discussion, and kudos to the staff, because they do a great job, no question.
Mr. Taylor?
I mean, not to belabor it, but I mean, the the famous story about SAP is that literally on a Friday, they turned off the old system and turned on the new one. And when you asked the question, did you run it in parallel to test it? People sort of looked at you like, so I think, yeah. And I think they couldn't send a bill out for 18 months? That was the best story. That's right. It was really very interesting. Should we?
Right, the accuracy was worse than the sending.
Anyway.
Any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Mandyke.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the presentation. I want to thank all the staff for that. One of the things that I would love to see in some of the future meetings is what does a very specific concentration on what staff needs to go to the next level. I think it's great that we've seen such wonderful improvements, but what's next? And I think I would like to hear from the key staff of if we made investments in this area, we could get here. If we made investments in this area, this is where we could go here, and what their priorities are. I love the fact that we're looking at this, but then what's the next plan as we look forward to strategic planning and management study, whatever that might be. I think instead of us coming up with that, I'd like to hear what staff wants from that.
We can do that. Yes,
Yeah.
we can do that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'll make a note of that.
I know time's almost up, but 3 more slides and we're done. One of the many things that came out of the business transformation is I'm a visual learner, I'm a visual doer. Everyone in operations, we like working on maps, we like working on drawings. We need to visually understand what we're doing. What we're able to do is bring where our assets are geographically on a map into SAP. SAP has historically just been a database, so you go in there, you run a couple transactions, and fill out, and it's not intuitive. We brought the intuitiveness to SAP as part of that project, so now we can visualize where our work orders are, also create work activities associated off of a map. So we need to say, hey, we need to identify all these customers in this area. We need to create notifications to them and say, hey, we're going to be out in your area. Put on the customer record that we communicated with them. This is how we do it now. So it's been a huge improvement. Other areas, to Commissioner Mandyke's, is we're continually improving these tools, and where we're going is more on the predictive side of where do we need to perform our maintenance, and that's going to be sort of the next level that we're going to go to, and it's really about controlling and managing the data that is associated with the work we perform, the inspections we perform, and bringing that back allow us to make decisions, as well as leveraging. And when Tom does a presentation with plant maintenance, we're going to talk about our SCADA system. Top of the line, if we're a water utility, we're top notch when it comes to our SCADA system, and leveraging that to drive where we go do our work. And that's sort of the future where we're going, and hopefully driving the cost down on the maintenance related to that. So quickly go through this. So supervision and management training, it was one of the improvement areas. Oh, sorry, go to this. Real quickly, we did some management and supervisory training over the past couple months, leading about prior to COVID and then leading into COVID. We were meeting with our management and supervision regularly. A lot of this was base skills, including operations. How do we deal with labor relation issues? How do we manage our staff to get the most out of them? How do we discuss those tough issues with them that maybe we're referring them to HR with employee assistance program, those type of things that, like any company, is formalizing that training programming. So as management supervision turns over, we're bringing new staff in, we're continuously doing that. So we've been working on that. One of the key things that we did a couple of years ago was we need to make sure that our staff were safety compliance as well as legal compliance training across the board. So we actually implemented an online training program called SkillSoft, which transitioned to Percipio, and these are all great courses, very good content to deliver this training, and it was always just-in-time training. So if our folks finish a repair at 2:30, they're coming back in the office. Guess what? Unfortunately, these guys have the biggest workload when it comes to safety training.
I put myself in the same category as them. I'm not exposed to all the hazards they are, but I'm exposed to all the training they do, and it's a lot of training. It's hard for me to keep up. So, and these guys keep up. So kudos to them. They're going through, getting all the training. When we evaluated previously to going this, we were not compliant the way we should. So one of the other key things, and was directly with Scott and to our HR. So during our hiring process, we need our staff trained day one. So when they come in, what we're offering is the training to them as they're going through the onboarding process. So when they come in and they get a badge, their first day, they get their uniform and they're coming down to the yard, they're ready to work that day. They went through all their compliance safety training. They're ready to hit the ground day one. So that was a big step forward. We would have to potentially wait for a training class if it was in-person training. Now they're starting day one, so huge improvement there. Other things that we're doing right now, we have started a lean training, and part of this was with a supervisors training. We were training our supervisors a lot of on the core leadership competency skills within. It was primarily this group, with our utility services as well as our command center supervision and management. We meet every other week for about 2 hours and go through these core competencies, but we also talk about real life topics that relate to leadership as well as how can we do our business better as leaders. So right now we're entering lean training related to 4 processes specific to operations, and what we did was we expanded that in true lean fashion. We expanded that to the rest of the company, so we're getting others that are involved with that process and others that aren't even affiliated with that process but can provide their own perspective as an outsider to help improve that process. So this is ongoing. Nick Salemi, Kerry Blardo are part of this. We have a vast group. John Myrtle is one of the process groups. So we're finding is a lot of these areas where we can improve our processes are being brought up, and we're having very constructive conversations. So ultimately, hopefully, we'll look to develop these skills internally to help facilitate these process workshops internally. And the last succession planning was on the list. Everyone, like you mentioned, 35 years, 34 years, all the way down to 10 years here. I'm in my 18th year here, so we all started somewhere in this company. Whether I was the lowest engineer on the totem pole when I first started here. We have a couple of you guys worked as WPC operators, whether at the trash plant, whatever. We've all gone through some succession here, as Scott mentioned. That makes us understand what this company is all about. We started somewhere, we moved through it. But what I also want to mention is we like to honor our employees too. So we did have the opportunity to help support the veterans in Connecticut and Veteran Affairs, and we got recognized. I know Nick and Scott had sent out our recognition, but some of this, all the individuals that are in those pictures are veterans at the MDC. We did honor them. I know Chairman DeBello was part of the issuing of the supporting our veterans at the Veteran Affairs facility. So I just wanted to end on that, and that's the presentation. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent.
This is the first one.
This
is the first one.
And we have 5 more? We have a total of 8, right?
We have, right, a total of 7. The next one is going to be February 8th. It will be utility services and command center will be covered.
And if you can get anything out of these besides, there's a lot of information, right? When we go from each of these different presentations, the thing that I hope you hear the most is the interaction that each department will talk about, how we talk to operations, how we talk to customer service, how we talk to engineering. The problem with the 2003 study was it was proposing to divide us even further, to create more silos. And so what we have tried to achieve is to actually do the opposite, is refocus the efforts where they should be. Engineering should be the responsibility of planning and executing our capital investment work and coordinating with operations. So as these presentations go through finality, hopefully you'll gather that you'll see the interaction amongst the departments, not just on a email basis, not just on a telephone basis or a meeting basis, but through SAP. SAP was built and designed to communicate this information that you just heard tonight to all these very important departments that need to receive this data. And so it'll be, we apologize for it being long, but it's really something that is important for you to hear and understand the complexity and understand how much work goes into what they really do. It's not just they're out there in the middle of the street, 2 o'clock in the morning, freezing cold, trying to put a water main together. They're actually part of the solution because that repair sleeve means that the guys and the gals that are fixing it are going to be home much sooner than be out there for 6 hours. And every time we hear it's a repair sleeve, we say, because there's a lot of work that goes into shutting that main down. And as Pete said, or Matt said, there's all kinds of, processes we have to go through if we have to shut that main down with DPH. Flushing, disinfecting, all those things take time. And so it's just as important for them to be as efficient as they can be as it is for us as customers. So great job. Thank you very much.
And our goal is
And
to...
thank you for volunteering tonight.
The goal is to have these meetings run 2 hours, no more.
Yep.
To make it easier on everybody to get home, and after 2 hours, it kind of gets a...
The 2 hour, but.
We hit the 2 hour, yeah, because we started earlier.
Just a comment regarding something that Scott said regarding the last management study. I think that study is really stale, period. And I think it was flawed, for the record. I think not having feedback after the study was done to kind of explain, where they had made mistakes in assessing the issues. So to me, that's, when you're doing, it's like doing an audit.
Right.
You get the information, and then you have an opportunity to discuss that and then modify or correct that audit. It's almost like that type of thing. So, I don't put a lot of, validity, one because it's stale, and one because I think it was, and second because I think it was flawed. But I think going forward, I think, understanding, what we're doing today is very helpful because, it tells us how we're operating, and it answers a lot of questions, and for me, it's very beneficial. It's important knowledge as to how this organization operates. And perhaps down the road, if we have another management study, it's a better management study because there's always room for improvement, and it's an opportunity for, the staff to be able to do the kinds of things that Commissioner Van Dyke said, is how do you potentially improve on what you've got, and when you get input from the folks that are actually doing the work. And I put a lot of credence on, on the folks that are out there every day, sweating, the sweat and, and getting the job done, so.
And you are our advocates, right? So it's important for our commissioners to really understand what we do. I mean, maybe not retain everything tonight, but if you get an understanding as a commissioner, some of those details of what we do, and you get a phone call from constituent and says, what's going on, and you have a better understanding of what we do and how we do it, it makes our organization, it makes our commission more educated and more able to communicate with the community. So.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner.
I really think what's really significant is what we did do, what Scott did with this process. This be $750 million to do what you guys put together in 6 months, 4 months? So, anyway. And
All right.
We're happy to do it.
Now you got the basis to say, here's what we've got, and go from there.
Okay, any other questions from commissioners? All right, going on to number 7, opportunity for general public comments. Anybody online? I don't think there's anybody here, but anybody online? General public comments? Okay, all I can say, thank you very much for a wonderful presentation, and for myself, because I'm nosy, whenever I go by an MDC truck, whether it's in East Hartford or Windsor, I always stop, I always get out, I always want to take a look, and you guys do a phenomenal job, so I want to put that out there.
We're behind a Dunkin' Donuts.
Do we have the appropriate motion?
Motion adjourned.
Adjourn. Without exception.
15-minute.